Hello, everyone. This is the Istio user experience meeting. I'm showing the document for our agenda for today. One thing we had planned to talk about was CubeMan from Walmart Labs, but we may not be getting our demo for that, but it's in the notes if anyone wants to check it out. There are some screenshots for it. And it's got some Istio-specific stuff in it, Istio English recipes and stuff up here. I haven't done a lot of playing with it, so hopefully we can look at that and get a demo of that this week or at the next UX meeting. The next item I want to talk about is the structural idiom, because a lot of subcommands have been proposed for Istio Cuddle, and Lewis pointed out that there's sort of different ways of doing these commands. So we all are used to in kubectl, kubectl get pod, but Docker is sort of different. OpenStack, OpenStack compute service create. There were lots of sort of different patterns for that, and I was wondering. So we have this. It was just a comment on this Istio Cuddle Meshify, and we were talking about it there. It seems like a bigger thing than it should be a bigger comment than just a comment on Meshify. Maybe we need a document to sort of suggest to people writing commands how these should all go. So I had originally talked about Istio Cuddle add to mesh or Meshify. What do we think should be the structure for Istio Cuddle subcommands?
I think it should be similar to like kubectl, like kubectl verb resource.
So we have for the stuff like get and delete, the kubectl stuff works great. I love it. Kubectl somewhat falls down with things like kubectl create, kubectl port forward. These commands are like completely different things. There's no notion of a subcommand. So in Istio we have a subcommand like experimental, or I think there's an authorization. And I think that one of the questions is sort of how should we have subcommands? How should we structure them? So if it's just verb type, kubectl is great. I prefer kubectl to the OpenStack way. But I remember when I switched from OpenStack to Kubernetes, that it confused me that the things were in different order. There was no compute subcommand in kubectl, and the create was sort of after the type. So I want to stick as close to kubectl as possible. What do we think about some of these operator commands? Where do they belong?
So I think kubectl syntax works if you have CRUD operations on resources, and that those operations are common across all those resources. It's not clear, given some of the examples I've seen for the operator or the Meshify, the verbs there, how well you could standardize on the set of verbs. Like add to mesh, would we add to mesh all of the resources that we support? What are the standard set of resources that Istio is composed of? And does that combination of verbs and nouns compose in some reasonable way? From the examples I've seen, it's hard for me to see how that would work. Versus having a different kind of hierarchical structure where you have a top level, a mesh concept, and then you have actions against that. So the actions are kind of specific to the type.
So when I had originally written that to mesh, I had imagined that as being like patch the pod to turn injection on or off. The pod restarts. So I was originally thinking, Istio Cuddle pod mesh add, Istio Cuddle pod mesh remove, these kind of things. So I guess, um, is there, but, Istio pedal pod seemed like it would be hard to find. Like if you were looking to deal with injection, you wouldn't be looking under Istio pedal pod.
Yeah,
Well,
so you're saying that, maybe we should group together, like a a category of subcommands and do it like the way kubectl plugins work, right? Like, because kubectl without plugins is just kubectl and a verb, but if you have various plugins, it's kubectl, the name of the plugin, and then whatever the plugin wants, it's kind of up to the plugin.
Yes. So anyway, it's good feedback, and let's for the proposals that are out there, let's try to align them all, and especially for anything new we add in 1.3, let's make all the commands work together as good as possible.
So what would be the specific guidance then? I mean, are we deciding that there is one direction we want to move forward, and then we recommend that for all new commands and work on migrating existing commands so they fit into that structure?
So I like istio category if it's maybe category is optional for the built-ins, and then sort of verb type, I guess. So the kubectl way, get pod, but category first, sort of the OpenStack way, OpenStack compute. This is what I'm thinking.
And how would add to mesh look like in that approach?
Well, so that's why we got stuck here. So it would certainly be like
It seems like some good examples would help make a decision here. If we just enumerated everything that we have today, if we were going to recategorize it, plus all of the commands that have been proposed over the various docs, and see if one is more sensible than the other.
okay. Should I write up a proposal or something that just sort of reviews what we have now and talks about it for the next meeting?
I think just the examples. I don't know how much additional, textual description of what those commands do is necessary. It seems like it should be just at the first pass looking at the side by side. If there's some common verbs, does it make sense to add to mesh a pod in every other type, and then what are the types that we have?
Okay.
Because that works well for kubectl, because you have a standard set of resources defined by the API conventions, and there's a common set of verbs that operate on those resources. I'm not sure that is necessarily true with Istio, but maybe that's the case, and having some examples would help clarify that.
Fair enough. So, any other thoughts on this before we move on? So it was suggested on Friday that we all the work groups scrub the sort of bugs. We have 96 user experience issues right now, and many of them have no assignee. Can we take 15 minutes and sort of go through them? I realize that a lot of the people on this call are the people who might be doing them. So let's see what we can sort of go through and do this anyway. Product page won't run with different UID. I thought we had already done this one actually. So I will not assign anyone to that, and I will link it. Remove test parameters from istio. This one's really easy. Let me tag it as being, actually let me not tag it, because it might be very tricky. It looks like it's deep in there. Let me go through the ones that I know. So this one, I got a complaint about. Somebody did a commit somewhere, and all of the command lines are doing this now. They're offering a huge amount of options for testing. Do we know even who did this and why? Clearly, we have a problem. All of the Istio cuddle tests just tested it prints the output as expected. There were no tests to make sure nobody added any options. So of course, when someone added 50 or 20 options, the test didn't fail. But this is clearly wrong. We need to check on who did that.
So this indicates that the main binary is also checked somehow.
Right. For logging, when the main binary was changed, Istio cuddle did some clever things to hide some of the stuff that you never use except running as a server. We probably want to do that, but
No. We don't want to hide those. This something is not being compiled properly.
okay.
We should not do this.
Martin, can I assign this to you?
Sure.
I'm having trouble hearing you, so if you said no, too bad. I think you said sure. Pilot reports unauthorized when attempting. Well, this is in a bunch of different areas, so I'll ignore that one. Easy way to view which services are part of the mesh. So this is actually a good one. Let me assign myself to this to at least do initial thing, and maybe this will be related to the demo I'm going to give if the KidBand doesn't show up. MTLS ignored without container port declaration. This one is controversial. I created this one, and I tagged it as security and user experience both. So here was the weird thing. I was using this file that ships with Istio as an example. It started 4IO with container port 8080, but of course the service defines both 8080 and 8079. And when I was testing it, I had all sorts of problems. The Istio cuddle TLS check reported that 8079 was doing MTLS, but it wasn't. The security that we thought was turned on was not turned on because the IP tables never sent the traffic through Envoy, so no Istio rules had any effect at all. Do we think it's a serious problem that if you don't define a container port, you don't get your security stuff respected? So Howard says in the future this is going to go away. We have documented it. I don't like it, but we'll see what's going on. And I'm also working on a new tool that's going to help with that, which I will demo on this call. If the KidBand guy doesn't show up. These issues.
Yeah. Hi, Ed. This is Frank. We just joined. Sorry, I had all the meeting this morning, so I didn't check the Slack message.
No problem.
Yeah.
Glad to see you here.
Yeah, and I have a UK joining with me. He will be demoing the KubeNet. So
Excellent.
just let us know whenever it's a time, then we can.
Perfect. So I had planned you for the beginning, but I'm going to put you at the end. So maybe in another 20 minutes.
Okay.
So right now we're doing a bug scrub, trying to see all of the user experience bugs that we need. We can get someone assigned to them. Pilot
Sure.
and control plane not starting after full restart. It's tagged in a bunch of areas, so I will ignore this one. Deployment manager template does not work with the latest releases. Does anyone know what this is? So it's an environment. Do we have Stephen? All right. I will, this is an environment, I will let the environments group triage that one. Um, this one is also for environmental security standards. Better webhook and domain search support. Do we have anyone who wants to work on this? When it's multi-tagged like this, it's hard for me to get serious about demanding someone fix it. Same with this. Handle envoy exit when killed by accident. This one seems to be just us. No, we have no explainers and a bunch of reviewers hooked up to this. So, I will just assign someone to this later. Let me take this as a note for myself. Support invert match. I should add, this seems to be a request. Does anybody else think this is a good request? Just adding everything Envoy supports to virtual service seems like a bad idea. What do we think?
Is this the appropriate, the best group to have to discuss that sort of issue? Some of these are fairly networking or policy and telemetry specific.
I think you're right. Certainly for this issue, I think I'm going to take user experience off.
Well, I mean, I think it's a user experience area, but it kind of falls into the functional domain of the networking group. I imagine a lot of these issues would be similar. So I don't know what the right flow for that is, because in some sense we're all responsible for user experience. And I think it's hard for this group alone to solve a networking usability problem or a telemetry usability problem on their own.
That's fair. For the rest of this call, we'll only look at things that are exclusively tagged user experience that have no owners. Here's one to improve the documentation website. Should we tag it docs? Let some docs people work on it? I don't want to just give it to Frank because he's the only person I know who does docs.
So ends.istio should not be here. So we should just close this. Or just assign it to me, that's fine. It's not about the main Istio.io website.
Okay, fair. I'm having a hard time hearing you, but I will not try to get an owner for it. Pilot log levels are not correct. This is just user experience. Probably got auto-tagged. I've noticed since the auto-tagger has been labeling things, I haven't been able to, or I've been forgetting to triage things as quickly as before. When Sidecar rejects Envoy configs, it's tagged as info level. That does seem to be pretty lame, but it seems to be networking. So here reports the proxy status and often TLS checks do not work. I will assign myself just to triage it and figure out if it's correct or not. List of applications incompatible with Istio is I consider it to be an epic, although it's not officially a ZenHub epic. I've added to it this week the problem that we've been having with JMX, JRMP. So in this item, I'm trying to capture all of the other issues where we have problems with compatibility. So what I noticed was that people were fixing compatibility problems with Istio, but it was hard to know if we were making progress or not. So this sort of captures middleware that I think either doesn't work or is almost impossible to configure with Istio. And the hope is that as we fix these things, we'll cross them off from here so we can sort of be proud of our progress.
So Ed, shouldn't that be documented in our docs rather than just issues?
Right. So we do have a doc for MySQL to tell people to set it up as either strict or no TLS. That permissive TLS doesn't work. In some cases, these are documented. In other cases, some people claim they work like CockroachDB, but I couldn't get them to work. And in some cases, they simply don't work. Putting them here at least lets people Google them and see it, but it would be nice if before people spend 3 hours trying to get Couchbase working or Elasticsearch that they sort of got some hints here. How should I tag this as doc, or what should I do?
I think we're missing general documentation on how to get stateful application working when Nature TLS is enabled. I've seen different blogs, people provide guidance on how to do that, but the Istio community has never released like an official recommendation as far as I know.
Yeah, that's correct, Lynn. And like we have been able to make Cassandra work, for example, but it's not that easy.
It's not. It's actually super hard because the documentation wasn't intuitive, and it's almost feel like every single type of application you need some type of documentation.
Should I? Okay, just see Frank.
Ed, like maybe you should just keep this as an epic and then make like child paths for documenting each one of those incompatibilities.
That makes sense. So Mander requested a semantic diff tool for the proxy config dump. No one has been assigned to that, and it has no milestone. Do we want to give it a milestone or assign anyone to this? I have some tricks getting around the keys. I use JQ, and not being started, I use JQ and things when I'm comparing this myself. But I have certainly found it difficult. I spent a lot of time comparing config dumps when I was trying to debug the issue that turned out to be no container port being exposed. So things that we have for this would be good, but I think no one has a good idea of a config diff tool to use with this. Of course, it looks like someone says CubeMan will have this functionality, so maybe we should see if CubeMan have
That's me. This is UK. Yeah, I added that just for fun. Because we were discussing it already before when for some other issue.
Okay. So I think most of this stuff has an owner or is not exclusively user experienced. I will try to go back, and on the next call, I will try to focus on visiting the moves I need to pick on people for. So maybe we should move on now and see a CubeMan demo. So I invited Frank Young to come from Walmart Labs, who has released CubeMan. I thought that it would be interesting for people to see how Walmart Labs thinks users are going to be interacting with Kubernetes and Istio. Frank, can you give us a 15, 20-minute demo?
Sure. Just gave a very quick update. CubeMan actually came from the situation where we want to investigate some complicated use cases, bug actually, when we deploy Istio, we use Istio and Kubernetes. We noticed some challenge of like gathering information and also search for the information that we want to search. It was actually UK's idea to initiate this project, and he is also would be the person who demoed Kubernetes today. Kubernetes is very UK. Yeah,
Can you see me?
Full name
I
is
my video now.
Umakant, but he go with
Yeah,
UK.
If you haven't used WebEx before, to present, you click the box that looks like an up arrow coming out of a box.
Can you guys see it?
Yes.
All right. Good. Awesome.
Yeah, just a heads up, Kubernetes is a pretty feature-rich tool. 20 minutes is probably not enough to touch all of the features, but UK will try to give a high-level introduction. If anybody has any interest, we can schedule another session to do a deeper dive. Okay, UK, it's
All
on you.
right. So yeah, I was gonna start with that actually. What Frank just said, that just for record, 15 minutes is not enough. You cannot see Kubeman in 15 minutes. Okay, so that is one. Second thing I wanted to get out of the way, Kubeman is a superhero. So we laid that to rest. So having said that, so what is Kubeman? As you can see, Kubeman is really an application. It's a tool. I don't know if many of you have visited the Git repo, but I have a kind of exhaustive documentation there, so you could get an idea of all the features of Kubeman later also after this presentation. Because 15 minutes means that I'll probably have to rush through it in first half, and then I will leave at least 5 minutes for some discussion questions, etc. that I could answer. So Kubeman really is a tool primarily to investigate Kubernetes and Istio. And let me just quickly show you what all it involves. So basically the way it works is, as you see, the basic application starts with nothing. It's empty, all right? Well, at least there is a toggle button here. What you do is you connect to a cluster. So when you say select cluster, it will look at your local kube config, read a list of all the clusters that you have connected to in the past, and that's where this list is coming from. And it will also use your saved context, your auth that you use to connect to a cluster, which was saved in your kube config, to also then use the same auth to connect via APIs. So here's a list of clusters. I'm just going to go to my Docker desktop and ignore the fact that it shows up twice. It's a problem in my config file. So what you could do is you could select a cluster, and you could just stop there. If I say OK, then it will connect to that cluster, the Kubernetes cluster I selected, and now it gives me a bunch of recipes. But before we go into that, if I go back to the selection box again, one more thing I could do, I could go to namespaces, and now it is showing me all the namespaces that are present. I could search, for example, Istio, right? Since we are dealing with Istio, the audience is pretty much, this whole meeting is about Istio, so I'm going to, focus primarily on Istio-related stuff. So I could limit my scope. So what is happening here, right? What am I selecting? I'm selecting my context. Basically, I'm saying I want to work with this one cluster, and optionally, I want to work with these selected namespaces. And then we will see, how it plays a role when you select namespaces to limit your context. Going back to cluster, one of the things I could do is I could work with multiple clusters. So for example, I could, select 2, 3. It allows up to 3 clusters to be selected for now. Why a limit on 3? Basically for screen real estate. As you will see when we go through some of the features, that the screen real estate is always limited, and hence you got to draw a line somewhere. So I drew a line on 3. So let me go ahead with that. All right, so I change my selection. So now you see it is showing me on the top that I am connected to my Docker desktop. I have selected Istio system namespace. All right. Bunch of the things that I'm not going to go through all the features because 15 minutes again, but I'm just going to show you the menu so you get an idea. And most all of you are pretty much already aware of all the aspects of Kubernetes and Istio. So you see, you can do a bunch of things around clusters. You can get a quick overview of, what does my cluster involve. So in this case, this cluster has only one node, but it's showing you the annotations, the labels, how many CPUs, et cetera, et cetera. Just getting a quick overview of the cluster. I could get a usage of the CPU and memory. This is going to fire kubectl command, collect the data and come back. I'm going to just move on. I'm not going to wait for it. You can get the HPS status. One of the interesting things that you could do is, which out of my own experience, many of these features came to my mind as I was playing with Kubernetes and Istio. When you have to deal with some issues, then the pain that you go through, the idea of KubeMen primarily, the philosophy is that, what if we capture those pains, those learnings, the wisdom, make it actionable. And one of the things, for example, is many times you run into the issue where you see you have an IP address, for example, in logs of one pod, right? This pod is trying to connect to another pod. It's getting a 503, maybe from ingress gateway, right? You see 503. And the 503, the log message has some IP address. And you want to know who was the other party that responded with 503. So one of the things this plugin, this recipe here does is you can type an IP and it can find the components that matching that IP. Now, since I don't have an IP handy, I'll come back to this. I'll look at some other stuff and then pick an IP, come back to this. You can look at events, not that interesting. You can look at, are you guys able to see the screen? Do you want me to zoom in a little bit maybe?
We can see it.
I can zoom in. I mean, KubeMen allows you to zoom in also, by the way. So resources. So these are top-level groupings, right? Cluster recipes, event recipes, resource recipes. So under resources, I'll find everything related to resources. But at some point, you will start saying, wait a second, there are way too many menus. I cannot deal with this. Well, I can start typing. I can say, show me everything you have about service. Okay, service too many. Service logs. You see, now it has this quick search thing here. I can find recipes based on, some keywords. Now it is telling me, oh, you have a bunch of things that are related to service logs. You can check the logs, which is at a point in time. I can tail them and keep observing them. So for example, if I go there, then just to show you the KubeMen general usage pattern, if there is a recipe that requires one or more services, right? So here this recipe requires one service to be selected so that it can show you logs of that service. Now it is telling you, oh, I have 7 items, 7 services, pick one. Why 7? Because now we go back to the thing I was talking about earlier. I limited my scope to Istio system namespace, right? So now it is only looking at services which are defined in the Istio system namespace. If I remove the namespace scope and I keep the whole cluster as my scope, then it would have found, I don't know, 500 services, and it would have given me a huge list. It would take more time. It will be slower, but I will have more options. I can then search here as well. I can say, oh, I was looking for ingress gateway logs. Now what it will do, so what is happening, and I'm just going to give you just quick examples of the usage patterns. What did happen here? There is no such thing as service logs, right? Really, there are pod logs. So what KubeMen is doing is it said, oh, you wanted this service. Let me find how many pods are there backing this service, how many containers are there backing those in those pods. Let me collect and combine the logs from all of those pods, and then it is giving you a unified view of all the logs for that service. Good, in some cases useful. Other cases, when you want just one pod's log, you could say, I want pod log. And now you see the same pattern. You can check logs of selected pods instead of selected services. If I go there, now it will say, oh, I have all these containers and pods. Which one you want to go to? I'll say, oh, I want to go to ingress gateway. Oh, you have SDS and proxy. All right, proxy. And same thing. So you get the idea, right? What is happening? So the pattern that KubeMen is really implementing is that it takes the knowledge of Kubernetes, the knowledge of Istio, and then it tries to present them in a easy to consume way so that as an end user, I don't have to deal with command lines and trying to connect the dots as much manually. Many of these recipes can do it for me. Okay, let's move on. What are some of those examples of how you can connect dots? I'm going to skip some of the Kubernetes thing because I guess you guys might be more interested in Istio stuff than Kubernetes stuff. So Istio ingress recipes. Well, there are a whole bunch of them. I can just look at ingress details. It's going to build a quick summary of, what does ingress have. It has, this is my service. Here are the containers. And as you see what I'm doing, if I click on the header, it is minimizing it. So, I can click on the top level and I'm getting an overview of all the output. So my ingress gateway on this local Docker is running these 2 containers, 1 pod. I have 4 gateways deployed, 4 virtual services deployed. And then I can look at the YAML of the service and deployment as well. All right, good. I'm going to skip through some of those, but you can take a quick look at these recipes here on the left, and you can imagine what it might be doing. Some of the more interesting things, find overlapping gateways, for example. This came out of our real experience here, that at some point we ran into this bug in Istio where if you have 2 gateways which are overlapping in the sense of the same host name, then when the pilot sends the config to Envoy, it breaks, it gives this causes this error, and Envoy stops starting. So then edit this recipe. This recipe will look at your cluster and say, are there any gateways which have host overlap? Now the Istio issue has been fixed since then, but nonetheless the recipe lives. Gateways with missing secrets. It will look at all the gateways defined in the cluster and find if there are any gateways that reference a secret, SGS secret, but the secret is missing. In which case, of course, it will not work, right? So this is like giving you an opportunity to preemptively look at issues. Certs report. It will look at all the certificates that are deployed on ingress gateway, and then it is giving you a summary of how many gateways are using SGS certs, how many gateways are using mounted certs. More interesting or more advanced stuff, for example, is now you can use Kubeman to also investigate Envoy proxy stuff, right? So for example, I can look at all the Envoy clusters. I can look at Envoy listeners, routes, etc. Then here I can search. Give me all the clusters which have nginx dot one. Well, none. Okay, nginx dot service dot sc. No, something like that, right? So you can basically search, which points out to another feature of Kubeman is basically any recipe's output becomes searchable, and then it will highlight the results for you. It is filtering the results based on the matches. So it gives you a quick way for you to look at Envoy configuration, for example, right? I can look at Envoy clusters, find based on my service name. I can look at Envoy listeners, and then I want to find listener for port 7070. Oh, here is the listener for port 7070. Okay, then I can go into the overview mode. How many filter chains it has? It has 1 filter chain which has 1 filter. It is actually pointing to the RDS route HTTP 7070. I can go to the routes. So if I was investigating something, some connectivity issue, then I could use this tool and look at how is the Envoy listener configured, how is the Envoy route configured, right, for a certain port, and then I can try to connect the dots. Some of the more interesting stuff. So just exactly what I showed you just now, right? What I did is my goal was to find Envoy configuration for port 7070. Hey, one of the advanced recipes which I am working on as of now, it's not released yet because it's not done yet, is analyze port. So you see now I am on the analysis recipes, and here there are a bunch of advanced recipes. And what do you mean by advanced? Well, analyze port. You give it an input of port. So Kubeman has many patterns, usage patterns. One of the things is that recipes can take inputs. When you want to give an input to recipe, you have to prefix it with slash. Then it becomes an input. If I just type without slash, then I'm searching in the output, right? So here I'm giving an input, 7070. I hit enter. Now what is it doing? Now Kubeman is going to look at the whole cluster to see through the entire cluster how many places where port 7070 is being referenced. Now take a pause and think about it. How much effort would you have to go through to collect this information, just to collect this information, and then you have to analyze it further, right? About whether the information has any holes, there is anything missing. But just to find out that how many items, how many configurations, how many services, gateways, virtual services do I have in this cluster which relate to port 7070? Well, all you have to do is type 7070, and kubeman has found everything. So let me go into the overview mode just to show you quickly what all it found. It found that there are 3 gateways, 3 virtual services, and there are 5 services. Then it is also showing me the ingress gateway listen status, where it looked at the ingress gateway, and it is making sure whether ingress gateway is listening on this port or not, right? It said that, oh, port 7070 is forwarded directly. And now, probably not the best choice of words. What it means is that 7070 forwards to 7070. I can give you another example where, I have other examples where one port is forwarding to a different port.
UK, so this all looks really amazing, and I'm getting excited to try this out in my own cluster. I wanted to ask if you had anything to either compare 2 clusters or to compare a cluster with something like a snapshot from the day before.
Sure.
When I have trouble. One cluster's working, one's not. How are they different or worked yesterday? What do you have for that?
Let me do that, just that, because that's an excellent use of kubeman. So let's say I went back to my context and I'm selecting 2 clusters now, right? When I select 2 clusters, actually I will go back and limit it to Istio system namespaces, because otherwise some of these clusters, these are dev clusters, they are not really very fast. These are one of our Internet Walmart Labs clusters, and some of them actually take a long time to to connect to. So let me go here and let me select Istio system. All right, so I'm selecting Istio system namespace on both these clusters. So now I change my context to 2 clusters. Now there are a whole bunch of things that I can do in terms of comparison, right? Exactly what you said, right? So let me quickly search. What all do I have in terms of compare? I can compare to secrets, config map. I can compare cluster namespaces. I can see. I clicked on this compare cluster namespaces. Just a quick idea, right? This could be a starting point in your investigation journey. You want to see which namespace exists in which cluster. Maybe as a part of our deployment pipeline, we missed some namespace. And what it is doing is it took a superset of all the namespaces from both clusters. It's showing you a master list on the left. And for each cluster, it is telling you whether the namespace exists in the one cluster or another, right? And it's also highlighting it in red when it sees a difference. So, for example, foo is not in AF1, it is in AF3, right? Bar, same thing, and vice versa, right? There are some namespaces here and there. Okay, let's keep going. Compare namespace deployments. What does this do? It will look at, in the selected namespace, it will look at all the deployments and tell you which deployment is present where. Right, so again, the same idea. Telemetry is present in AF1, not in AF3. It gives you a clue as to you can now investigate, oh, wait a second, why is telemetry not present in AF3? I could go further. I could choose 2 deployments, right? So I can say ingress, why not? From AF1 and AF3, right? See what I'm doing now. I am selecting ingress gateway deployment from 2 different clusters, and I am asking kubeman to compare it. And now what it is doing, it is going through it field by field. So bunch of the fields, bunch of the data, it extracts from the deployment YAMLs, and it shows you line by line, and at the bottom it also shows you the full YAML. But it extracts certain field also just so that it can highlight certain data for you. For example, it is telling you that annotations are different. Okay, one is on revision 1, revision 3. Does it matter? I don't know. But you get the idea, right? What it is doing. It is telling you the templates are different. Now you compare them and see what is happening. Let's go further, right? So you could do the same with services. You could do the same with pods. Let's do something more interesting. Compare ingress envoy configs. Oh, that is interesting. Let's see what it does. So this plugin it allows you to compare ingress gateway envoy proxy configurations across pods, which can come from different clusters. Now things are getting more interesting. I can select this and this, right? 2 different pods. One is coming from AF1, one is coming from AF3. I can say compare. Now this is where what it is going to do, it is going to load the envoy configs, the whole config, from one pod, then the second pod. It will compare them, and then it will tell you what matches, what does not match. And it will do for all 4 categories, the bootstrap, the clusters, the listeners, the routes. So it takes time. It is going to, do it one category at a time, present the output to you. You could look at the output. And so what kind of output it produces? Well, it did not have a good start. It's saying, hey, at least the bootstrap does not match. Okay, fine. And it is telling you that I see this one bootstrap in cluster 1, don't see it in another. Keep going. Then it says, oh, I see this bootstrap on the right side. I don't find it in the first one. Let me go into the overview mode quickly. You click on the top, you get the overview mode, right? So let me start from the top again. Bootstrap. But we mostly know that bootstraps actually will differ, right? Because bootstrap is your bootstrap configuration. The actual configuration will always be different between pods. Listeners. It is saying that I found 80 and 443, they are matching exactly between those two ports. And it is saying, oh, no mismatch listener config. Oh, that's very promising. Right? Route. What did it do? It is saying at least one route matches, but then there are a bunch of routes that don't match. For example, alert manager is in one cluster, one pod, it's missing in the other pod. Disk NX is missing in the other pod, and so on. So see what it is doing basically, because if we go into too much details, then we'll run out of time. But what this plugin is doing is it is comparing the Envoy configs, and it will tell you for things that match, it will just give you a list like we saw on the top, right? It will just tell you, hey, 80 matches, 443 matches. Hence, I'm not going to show you the configs of 80 and 443. If you want to see the configs of those, there are other recipes that will do that. Right? For those where there is a mismatch, either the same config is present in both places, but they are mismatched, or they are present in one and missing in another, then it will show you the config. Right? Then you can go further. You can compare pilot config with one Envoy. What it will do is let me just click on it just so that you get an idea. It will load a list of Envoy proxies. It will ask you to select one proxy. Then it finds out which pilot is feeding that proxy, right? Because we know that, right? Different pilot instances feed different Envoy proxy instances. At any point in time, one Envoy could be connected to any one of those pilots. So once an Envoy proxy is selected, and in this recipe, even Ingress Gateway is being treated as Envoy proxy, so that's fine. And remember, my context is limited to Istio system right now. That's why the only proxies I'm seeing is Ingress Gateway. If I expand my context, I will see the sidecars as well. Right? Then you select one Envoy proxy. Now it found out which pilot it's connected to, and it's comparing the configs from pilot and the Envoy proxy. And it's going to tell you, oh, listeners match. There is no mismatch in the listener. It's telling you which routes matched. All these routes are matching. No mismatched routes, which is good. It skipped a static route. There is some logic where if Kubemen cannot figure out how to compare certain routes, which is mostly for, I think, static routes, I just skip them. But I list them here nonetheless that, hey, I did not compare them. Then it's saying these clusters are matching. Let's see if it found any mismatch. I hope not. That would mean that pilot is in sync with this Envoy proxy. But now you see the value of this, right? No mismatch cluster config. So what just happened? Right, it compared pilot with Envoy, and it's giving you a quick summary that, yeah, hey, most of the stuff is matching. Life is good.
Yeah, so before you come in, I think Ed was review issues. I remember Manda had an issue to compare out the proxy config, right? This is pretty much it.
This is it. That's why I commented on that ticket.
Okay,
Kubemen already has it.
Yeah.
So all this work looks really great, and I wonder how what the other people on the call think of it. Should we tell people this is a great tool?
This looks great. I just had a question. What language are you using to build up these libraries for validation?
So this whole thing is built on Electron. I don't know if you're familiar with Electron. Basically, that's Node.js and Chrome VS8, Chrome V8 engine combined. Electron is a framework which basically uses Node.js for the backend, takes the Chrome engine for rendering, puts them in a single package which can be used to build desktop applications. So then the entire code base is written in TypeScript, runs on in the V8 engine for rendering, runs on Node.js for some of the backend stuff. So basically it's TypeScript. But it's packaged as a desktop application.
if errors happen, this tool seems to detect them, but you had to explicitly ask to sort of run these recipes. Is there a way to get this to do some kind of background validation?
So those will be more recipes, basically, because one of the things that the design of this tool is that when you launch the tool will wait for you to do something. But then there could be one recipe, like there are some of the recipes, like look at this, right? Analyze service details and routing. All I have to do is click this recipe and pick a service. So in this case, again, since my context is limited to Istio system, I am only seeing Istio system services. But now what it is doing is exactly, to some extent, what you were thinking. I ask Hubeman to just run like a full, thorough checkup, but just from the point of view of this service. What it's going to do is look at a whole bunch of things, which I'll show you later. But it will go through everything basically, and if it detects any issues, it will give it to you. But then one of the things I think what you had in mind is you just launch the application and then it is proactively doing something. Right now it doesn't do anything proactively. You have to then trigger a recipe, and that recipe could do something very little, or it could do a huge amount of work. Does that make sense?
It does.
Cool.
Thank you for coming and presenting this to us. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, what's the easiest way to get the installation?
The GitHub repository.
Would you recommend getting the pre-built binaries or build it?
Pre-built binaries would be the easiest way to get it working. If you are on Mac, then that is definitely the easiest. For Windows also, I build the binary, but I don't test it as much. But the binary that I publish is for Windows. If you are on Linux by any chance, then you might have to build it yourself.
Okay, and the binaries, do you have a release? Is that on?
Yes,
on
I did a release. Yeah, I did a release over the weekend. So
okay.
Public release is out there on GitHub repository. Do you have the
Gotcha.
link to the repository? Do you want me to?
I just got it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this document is open sourced, so we are also looking at the community to contribute to it, or at least feedback with a use case that we can make the tool even better, more comprehensive.
Yeah, and personally, what I was expecting is, the reason why I was excited to present it to the team, to teams in general, is so that, once you're the experts of this space, right? So once you start thinking, you look at this tool and you start thinking, then you will probably come up with a lot more ways that your users' lives can be made easier, right? More things that tools like Human can do, and so on. So then we can keep enhancing, So I hope that we will kickstart the feedback cycle for this.
Can you comment on how you use it inside Walmart? Like, what's the adoption like, and what kind of problems do you envision your teams to solve with this?
Nowadays, basically, this is the go-to tool inside Walmart for any issue related to Istio, at least. And then it is now the adoption is spreading. Basically, any team which is either onboarding. So we are a platform team, right? We provide Kubernetes and Istio as a platform, and then there are product teams who are responsible for bringing their services, their applications on board on Kubernetes and Istio, right? So as far as platform teams goes, we have been already using this tool, and we are seeing the value of this pretty much for any kind of Istio-related issue that we investigate, we come up with. Now the service teams are also, as they start bringing their applications on board on Kubernetes clusters, they will probably see the values, they will start using it as well. So the adoption is spreading.
Yeah, Strategy is like a department name within Walmart. It's basically a cloud platform. So our first like a tier 1 support, tier 0, tier 1 support, as well as all of our engineers who are working on Istio, they are widely adopting this tool. So that's also one of the reasons we want to make this tool better is to put this Kubernetes in the open source community so that we can leverage everybody's effort in either the feedback or the contribution. Like so if you guys find the use case that this tool has not resolved, please just let us know, and we'll welcome any feedback.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you envision to be a standalone tool, or are you open to possibly merging this to some of the other tools out there?
So which tool did you have in mind?
Well, there's a couple of tools that's been out there, I guess, that kind of help user to troubleshooting issues related to Istio. So Kayali would be the first one that comes to my mind, even though Kayali doesn't do what you have today, but people have been looking at Kayali to do some of the troubleshooting. The other thing, it will be Istio CTL, which we are also adding operator capability into Istio CTL.
But SCTL is more of a command line tool, right? So
yeah, it's more about a command line, but not so much about dashboard. However, Istio CTL does have a command to allow you to launch dashboard. So you could do Istio CTL dashboard, which could potentially launch one of the dashboard, and this might be one of the one or integrate with one of our existing ones.
So
okay.
I haven't used Electron. Can this run as a server? Could this be something that we install the same way we do Prometheus or Kayali, or as an image that runs in your cluster for this?
So as is Electron is really a framework for building desktop applications. So which means as is, this will not. There's no way to run this as a server. But then inside this project, the code can be extracted and code can be made to run on any Node.js server for that.
I'm getting some echoes. Maybe Frank has his microphone on too and it's going through. But okay, yeah, so the story for combining this is that it's Electron, so it's going to be hard to combine this with anything.
To run as a server, yes, it will require the code itself is Node.js code or basic TypeScript code, which can be refactored out, and then you can make it as a hosted server-side offering. But the current incarnation of this, the way it is set up right now, is meant to be a desktop application.
So the demo you are showing to us, there's no requirement to install anything on the Kubernetes cluster, is that correct?
Yeah, nothing to install. It's just a binary. You could go to the GitHub repository right now and download the binary for Windows or Mac.
Yeah.
And then just set it up and run.
So quick question. In my normal day-to-day, I always use localized kube config files or a merged kube config. Is there any way to get kubeman to use? I don't adjust my local global kube config. I never do that because there's just too many different types of clusters that modify that in weird ways. So I isolate them to avoid that. Can I point it to a kube config, or can I have it use a merged kube config?
So that's actually a good point, because right now it looks at the global kube config. But
right, I see
in
that.
The next release, in the next release, I could make it configurable.
Yeah, because typically in my config file or in my terminal, I run a merged config that takes many configs and merge them on a single environment variable.
Right.
But to the console, to the terminal, it looks like one kube config. I kind of would like that with kubeman as well. It doesn't care where it gets it as long as it gets one. Right.
So you would want to point it to a single file, though, right?
A single file or a list of files.
List of files, and then you would expect it to merge.
And just use kube config merge will. I mean, the kubectl merges them. If it sees multiple in the kube config environment variable, it will merge them all into one.
Right. All the kubemen won't even need to merge it. It can just extract the cluster information from all of those and show you it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I just need to point it to the ones to use, and I think it would just work.
Yeah. That makes sense. Actually, that will be a useful feature to add. See, something good came out of this demo.
Thank you so much for coming here. I think we're at the end of the hour, so I'm going to end this meeting soon. Do we have any follow-ups for our next meeting in 2 weeks?
Well, we need to settle down the structure idiom, right? Because we really need to make progress on that.
Yes, so I will come up with a structure idiom and post that to the Slack channel and maybe to the Discuss for what we have, and try to incorporate the suggestions that were on that work item.
Ed, this is Martin. I had an item in the agenda there for the operator CLI structure review, and this is something that has been previously reviewed. And I just wonder, are there any follow-ups on that, or what will it take to just basically get the okay to move ahead with it?
Was that so I didn't look at the agenda during the call. Was that the item for putting the operator command line into Istio Cuddle, or was it the one for the commands for the operator?
For the actual command structure for the operator.
So there were comments in there. Let me read that again before we approve it. I'm sorry we didn't get to it at this meeting.
Yep, no problem. If you could take a look, and we can certainly do it offline through the document as well.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to be ending the call. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.